On November 10, 1951, the air raid sirens wailed during a mock air attack on the city. 12 motorcycle officers were assigned to take off in all directions from the safety building. Officer Vernon White and 2 other officers were assigned to cruise the Lower East Side. The 3 traveled east on West State Street with their lights and sirens on. When they approached North Edison Street, as Officer White entered the intersection, a half-ton scrap truck heading southbound also entered the intersection. Officer White hit the brakes and swerved to avoid the truck, but hit the right side of it. He was thrown about 20 feet from the bike. He was semiconscious in the street and taken to County Emergency Hospital. He suffered serious internal injuries. Officer White died 2 hours later. Officer White was 38 years old. He'd been with the Milwaukee Police Department for 10 years. He left behind 4 daughters and his expectant wife.
Dating back, this was late 40s. He died in 1951, and I do remember he always took the streetcar to work. And he'd come home from work, and myself and my 2 older sisters we'd wait for him for streetcar after streetcar. When he'd get off, he'd come across the street and he'd throw one of us up on his shoulder and take us back to the house, and then we would all fight over who's going to unstrap his leg, leather things on his leg. And I got a job with Beneficial Finance in downtown Milwaukee, and there was a sandwich shop on the first floor where I would go down every once in a while and have lunch. And the owner, I talked to him, and one day I said to him, I said, you know, my dad used to direct traffic right over on that corner there. And he looked at me and he said, are you Whitey's daughter? I said, yes, I am. He knew my dad, and he stood in the middle of the street and directed traffic in 4 directions. And if there was an attractive young woman standing waiting to cross the street, he would stop traffic in all 4 directions and escort her across the street.
He was a great man in my eyes. I loved him dearly. When he would come home from work, he'd get off the streetcar and welcome him home. And he was good to his 5 daughters and his wife, Agnes.
My name is Kathy. I am the 4th sister of 5. My poor dad, he wanted a boy so, but he has 5 daughters, which I'm sure he would have loved, but I think I would have had a brother had he lived. I was just turning 2 when he died, so I do not remember him at all. But I've heard many great stories. And one of those stories was that the minute Fred Miller heard that he died, he instructed his office to immediately send my mother a very generous check. And 16 years later, I got a job at Miller Brewing Company and enjoyed Miller High Life just like my dad. And we had a wonderful mother who raised 5 girls by herself.
My mother was pregnant with me when my father was killed, and so I don't remember anything about my father. I still am very, very proud of him, and I remember growing up with people, you know, coming up to me and saying, thank you for your sacrifice. I got into the business. I worked 7.5 years with Muskego Police Department, and I worked for the Waukesha County Sheriff for 25 years as a dispatcher. I have to say this, I felt my dad there at many times, difficult times. He was like my guardian angel.
I started dating Jackie Jones, who is Bev's daughter, in 1990. And I learned shortly that I was a police officer since 1988, and learned that Jackie's grandfather had passed away in the line of duty. To be part of that and be part of the family and listen to the stories from the sisters and the daughters, I'm sure that's what inspired my son ultimately to pursue that same line of work, and he's working tonight. He's doing what he's wanted to do, and he's following in those footsteps. So very proud as I'm sure his grandmother is.
I am a police officer for Aurora Police Department in Illinois. I am the great-grandson of Vernon. As far as Vernon White goes, he's the angel that looks down and protects me while I'm on the job.
You know, years later, you think about it, you know, he had to have been special. I mean, so many people were there, every police officer and the mayor, and yeah, it was made us feel that we knew he was special.